Regarding rescheduling, tomorrow's the best day for me.
Okay. Um, yep. Uh, I'm happy to do that if that works better.
Okay. Regarding writing, I think it's fine to give it a try. Try to keep it on the shorter, simpler side and just see how it goes.
Yep. Yeah, my plan was roughly, I mean, I found the Zaz manifesto was obviously pretty well written. Um, and so I was going to try and structure things like that, like to uh, make an attempt to, or try and restrict how deep I go into things. I think is one way to sort of try that because I tend to put like parenthetical explanations all over the place, which makes it less good. Um, so that's sort of the first thing, and then yeah, and then trying to keep it like really tight to the point. Um, yeah, so I was imagining much shorter articles than I'd usually try and write.
Yeah, one of the things you can do is brainstorm things to include and then go through your list and just pick the best ones, try to be selective. And that helps with having a bunch of parentheticals because you're consciously choosing what to prioritize.
Yep. So I've started brainstorming some various stuff, and some parts of it, yeah, I mean, my trees are unbalanced. I guess is the easiest way to put it. Um, and so, um, yeah, particularly, I mean, one of the goals of some of the stuff that I was writing was, yeah, to only include the article or the arguments that are like really concise, and then not necessarily include lots of arguments for the same point. Just have one good one and leave it at that.
Yeah, okay, so what did you do since last session?
So I've in terms of the choice stuff, just to get that out of the way. So I've done outlines up to chapter 6, and this is with the that's just as far as I've made notes in the book. Uh, with the sort of newer style that we were talking about, as in trying to avoid like necessarily doing everything, but particularly focus on like either things that I like note or things that are important or stuff like that. Yeah, notes that would be more useful for me necessarily than as like yeah, more complete notes. And so that's a lot quicker, I'm finding, which is good. Um, so there's that. There was some stuff on FI. I actually had trouble. I was trying to write down this morning sort of what I did yesterday, and ended up having a fair amount of trouble actually recalling everything and what I did. I know that I like spent a fair bit of time reading stuff or doing things. There was some outlining and brainstorming that I did that I remember particularly, but yeah, but I sort of had a bit of trouble with that. Um, so yeah, so a few FI posts yesterday, I think. Um,
Where does the new
uh,
stuff start in the outline?
so we might have looked at chapter 2 and 3, but I hadn't put it up yet, I think, or maybe I had, but basically halfway through chapter 4. So
Okay.
um, yeah, so maybe he explains is probably about right. I'm trying to. Yeah, definitely the second paragraph is already done.
I'm just gonna look at my own notes to compare.
Sure thing.
This connects to a specific Goldratt method in It's Not Luck, where you brainstorm around 8 complaints, and then you do a logical cause and effect diagram where you find ways to connect them, possibly with intermediaries. And this is a way to find root problems or core problems, because once you connect everything, then you find the starting point in the tree that touches everything else.
Yep.
It's not that just that he didn't need to do a full analysis of Big Brand. I forget exactly what he says, but the point was partly that it's too big and complicated, so you have to focus. Like, doing the full analysis isn't a realistic option.
Yep. I think oops, I've got the thing hard. Like, yeah, I didn't bother to do a full analysis. It would have taken too much time. And then because I was focusing, I only need to look at a fraction. Most
Yeah,
things we can
okay.
exclude.
I don't like his phrasing that much, like, didn't bother, because it's not laziness, that's not the issue, so it's a little misleading. But okay, it's in the book as well.
Yep. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't like some of the phrasing. It's yeah, it sort of feels a bit either like dismissive or focusing on the wrong thing. But yeah, I sort of understand in the context of the book what it's trying to do, and from Efrat's point of view particularly, it's a bit easier to forgive as such.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I looked through these. The notes seem okay. Did you compare to the ones in the back?
No, so I haven't compared to the back yet. So that's sort of a thing that I've been meaning to do, but haven't actually gotten around to.
Yeah, I'd suggest doing that next to see how she does them.
Yep. I'll do that before continuing any more outlines, because if there is anything that I learn there, it's better to do it earlier.
Okay, did you have any questions about the book material?
No, so I feel pretty good about like everything covered in the beginning of the choice, like up to where I've read, um, feels pretty like uh, establishment level type thing, and there's a lot of like ideas that I've already been exposed to either by like theory of constraint stuff or um, BOI type things or that sort of stuff. So it feels pretty straightforward at this point, um, which I think has been part of the reason that I've avoided sort of making the notes because they don't feel as useful.
Yeah, if that's a problem, just do them at a higher level.
Yep. Well, I've since trying this new method, it's a lot
Going
more
better?
tolerable. So, yep.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I am noticing is I feel like I'm taking more time with my thoughts simply by or simply because of the work that we've done in terms of breaking down ideas and like the structure of sentences and things. I'm sort of like, yeah, a lot more conscious about how everything is fitting together, both in my head and then as I'm saying it.
That's good. I think that's a really important skill to have in your toolbox and to
Yep.
practice for a while. Okay, so did you have questions about yes no stuff now that we've gone over it?
Um, I don't think so yet. I'm like everything seems. I've watched bits of the tutorials we had again, and I've continued watching the like video two, or
The
the main
demoed
video.
ones?
I guess. Yep. So I'm about an hour into that. I think a little bit less. I've slowed down a bit on pausing and taking notes and stuff, just because it's as I've like been playing with the ideas more. They don't seem to like require nearly as much sort of yeah, a lot of the thoughts that I'm having aren't like necessarily directly related to the material, but like spurred on by it. Um, so yeah, so my like local mindset sort of plays a bit of a role there. But no, but I want to keep going through that. I enjoyed or some of the stuff that I'm sort of intending to do in that regard was um, like the questions that Alan's been posting about to FI. Going back and trying some of those that he's already done, which gives me a comparison as well, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I've started sort of doing a bit, I was going through the archives and um, I mean, particularly, I started looking for when, uh, like when you sort of, I guess, published Yes No or when Yes No was called Yes No, um, and just by
Oh,
chance,
yeah, I don't know about the name, but
um, so I think entirely by chance, the um, like, oh, I'm just gonna sort this. So it looks like uh, it was like 2 days after I initially added myself to the FI mailing list that uh, you sent the announcement email about product release.
ah,
So that gives me a date at least, but I'm not sure like if you wrote much about it beforehand or called it that beforehand or things like that.
yeah,
But
the
I feel like
name
at
might
least
have gone with the product release, but I had ideas about it earlier. Like, so I was trying to tell people that critical preferences was an error in early 2010, and I that was not when I first knew. So at least a bit before that, I had a decent amount of the ideas. So it predates BOI to know a significant piece of it at least. And then if you look through the posts in this index post, the 1595 post, you will find a variety of dates.
yep, that's good. Yeah, so I've sort of figured that you must have yeah been thinking about it for a while. Um, it's curious that it predates BOI, but I guess I imagine that not. I don't. You were still working on it, sort of thing, as a thought problem at that point, I presume.
Yeah, yeah, it got developed more and more over time. Here's one from 2016 called Rejecting Gradations of Certainty. That's definitely the same main idea as Yes No, but not the earliest at all. So here's Jan 2011, and I was writing about multiple incompatible unrefuted conjectures and dealing with that kind of issue.
Yep, it looks like around the like that's 1589. Um, um, yeah, around that time. Then it looks like there's a few posts.
Yeah, look, epistemology without weights. I wrote in 2013.
Cool. Um, there was there so there has been. This just reminds me of something I've been thinking about for a little bit. Um, the uh like non so when you so if I were there's a few things that I've sent to FI and no one's replied to, and sort of the question of how to interpret that as such. And I feel like I mean not that well it's sort of actually I mean it sort of fits the idea of like uh fallibilism in general in that the absence of criticism doesn't mean that there aren't criticisms, but at the same time there's sort of a reliability of criticism as such. So I'm sort of leaning towards like if something's not replied to, then people presumably haven't seen any obvious errors.
I
Is
would
sort of
not
the
assume that at all.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that was, yeah,
Sometimes people just don't like it, or they think it would be too much trouble.
or a waste of time. Yep,
Yeah, that's definitely one of the modes of not replying that happens. Yeah, if you think it's important or just periodically for some of the things, just ask. Self-reply after like 3 days and
yep,
ask why people aren't replying, what they think of it. Because that's a different question than the original post.
yes,
And
yep,
a lot of times people don't want meta answers. Like they don't want to be told, I thought your topic was boring. They'd rather hear nothing than a indirect reply like that.
yep.
Usually when they post about a topic, they only want answers about the topic. So if you actually want something else, communicating that will uh, dramatically increase the response rate of something else.
That makes sense. Um, cool.
People tend to get really upset when you tell them meta things. Like the guy like left a discussion after 103 posts.
Wow. That's feels odd in that there's a lot of sunk cost as such to not resolve. But I guess as well, if he's making the same mistake over and over again, I'm not sure what the
It's not
context
the
is there.
same over and over. It was just like he was very pushy that he wanted to discuss a particular mistake from his last few posts that he kept repeating. But it
Yeah,
wasn't it wasn't repeated throughout the discussion. It was just for like a 2 day period. This discussion was he took some long breaks, so it was like June 2019,
oh wow, yeah, yep.
also June 2019, so there's a lot of discussion then. But yeah, that's like a year-long discussion. But he was very pushy to get a response, but also didn't want to hear anything other than a direct response engaging with him in the way he wanted. And he didn't want to deal with the problem of that doesn't work for me. We need a way of continuing that works for both our point of views. Yeah, trying to get people to recognize that the goal should be to come up with some way of continuing a discussion that makes sense from both point of views is very difficult. That's a problem I have a lot in discussion.
Hmm.
They get offended when you tell them your point of view when there's any sort of like conflict or negativity in it, and they don't like the concept that they're supposed to come up with a way of continuing that makes sense from your point of view. Like, given the person thinks these negative things about me, I should come up with a way to continue that actually works for them, like cooperative. They don't get or dislike or find pressuring or something, and they also are bad at giving information about their point of view, like what changes do they want. They don't say that. Like here, he did not respond. Your response doesn't work from my point of view. Here's my point of view. Here's its constraints, etc. Is there any way you could rephrase? He did not try to express his point of view. He just got mad.
Hmm. It is, yeah. I've sort of been, I don't know, thinking about that. In part, so one of the things that I wrote down sort of this morning. Or broke down some more goals and stuff. Um, and one of them that I sort of started looking into a bit on the weekend was replying to some of the old topics that either I'd started or that involved me or whatever else that I hadn't dealt with well the first time. Um, Potentially with, like for example, there was a podcast that I saw that I replied to at some point, but I don't think there was ever a uh, a resolution to any discussion I started there. Where's podcast? So I think it was helping the masses. Um, whoops, can't see. Oh no. Helping the best people, helping the masses was the podcast in question. Um,
Yeah, if you want to get stuff resolved in general, one of the things that helps a lot is to pick a single topic to focus on at a time and say that you actually want to discuss it to a conclusion. And like that's the one. Because one of the common problems is people bring up a topic and they pressure you like you should respond, otherwise you're not being responsive, etc. And then you respond, and then a couple responses later, they just switch topics and they drop it. And people will do that over and over again.
Yeah. No, I think that was definitely one of the things that I did badly the first sort of go around as such. Um, yeah, so that's sort of maybe a good thing for me to practice as well is that idea of picking a single topic and actually finishing that, like getting to a conclusion there, as opposed to dropping it because it becomes hard or whatever else.
Yeah,
Which I
I
don't
mean,
think I've.
if it becomes hard, you can always ask for help inside the discussion, which is another thing people don't do very much. But you can express what's hard about it and ask, and you can say, this discussion's getting stuck because I'm having the following difficulties. You could make suggestions, like ask for suggestions from the other person. Do they have any solutions? If not, that might be a reason to drop it because if you're not sure what to do about the difficulties and also they're not suggesting solutions, then you could get a mutually agreeable dropping it thing because you have a problem with the discussion that no one has a solution to.
That makes sense. I think a lot of the time though, I'd probably find that I needed more knowledge on background topics, which then, yeah, obviously is a bit of indirection. But the next
Yeah,
thing would be, yeah, pausing the discussion to go away and learn some stuff and then come back.
right. That's okay too.
Um, I
The
guess in that,
problem with that comes up a lot is people pause to go read a book or something, and then their next post is about some other topic, and then they keep doing that rather than actually following up on the original one.
yeah, yeah,
People always bring stuff up kind of like out of the blue or dropping the context of what their actual problem situation is, like Doubting Thomas had like agreed he was an overreacher, and we tried to get him to like do some productive learning. And he sort of said okay, and then he just AFK'd for a month, and then he asked some random question about some topic for some reason that has nothing to do with the discussion history there and what problems were run into previously.
yeah. Particularly, it feels like if you're going to go back to something over a longer period of time, Discord is not necessarily the best way to do it. In that it's very hard to have like a long running discussion there. It's much easier for shorter stuff.
Yeah, that's part of why people use Discord.
Yeah. Um, but at that point, he should post to like FI, and
I
because it's
mean,
going to be
he's
a
doing it on
slower.
purpose. He doesn't want
Okay.
a persistent discussion over time. It's the same reason like Reddit and Twitter are popular and Facebook. I mean, not the only reason, but the discussions go away by themselves without anyone having to end them is a major feature for most people.
It's you get like a little ephemeral experience, and you don't have to worry about. It's like tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's
you got
all.
to get out of jail free card on the discussion at the end of the day every day.
Yeah, that
Okay,
makes sense.
so I had an activity idea, unless you have something else.
No, yeah, let's go.
All right, it is a text analysis passage. Oh, I wanted to ask about grammar too. Where did you get with the grammar article?
So I think well, I've done all the exercises and things.
Uh-huh.
Um, I haven't like properly gone through section 5 and like what I feel like because there's no exercises, I should really probably um actually try and like summarize it and write more of an outline to check whether I know it or not, as opposed to because right now it's easy to just like read it, not absorb it, and etc.
Okay.
Um, so just add that to the
Yeah,
thing.
I would suggest trying to get through that reasonably soon and probably moving on to my grammar slash text analysis gumroad
Yep.
after that.
Yeah. I do feel like I've got a reasonable grasp. I was thinking I'm possibly like I need to do some of the practice stuff that like I had some things that I chose for myself as exercises, but I should probably try and like consistently do uh like at least for some time like a few grammar exercises similar to the stuff that is in the article, to make sure that like really solidify the knowledge, like make sure it sticks. Um,
Yeah, one place you can get more practice is if you go through Peikoff's course, it has homework assignments.
yeah, okay, yep. I have recently re-downloaded that because the ARI download everything again email. And then I know you've got a video on that too, I think.
Yeah, Gumroad's navigation's not very good. If you go to elliotttemple.com, it's easier to find stuff. I made a list.
I also don't like the way that they do the preview picture here, and you don't really get this, like, unless you scroll down, if it's a long picture. It seems like it's hidden.
Yeah, I had issues with picture sizing and getting things cropped. Because in some cases, you have to have the same picture is used in multiple different places. So you can't just give them the correct size for each individual place.
Oh, yep, yep.
They're auto magically deciding what to do with the picture in multiple places, which are multiple different sizes. And it's like, it has to work on mobile and desktop and blah blah. And so that's a hassle. iOS is different. I remember when I made iOS apps, they would tell you every size of the picture they need, and then you upload each of those dimensions, and then all of the pictures come out okay.
Yep. I prefer that too. A lot of social stuff does that, like Facebook and YouTube and whatever. Which is much nicer because you actually have that control.
Yeah, so this it goes through the grammar article with a couple videos. Has one related to trees. It has stuff on relative pronouns and the word that and a few of those hard things. And it has text analysis from some books. Or this is like more grammar based. And then it has analyzing lies stuff. Just trying to, especially in number 4, help bridge the gap from grammar analysis to content analysis and make some of the connections.
Yep. No, I remember that. It'll be interesting to. I should maybe do some of the exercises and see what the difference in my analysis is. I don't think I did much compared to everyone else in that list there, though. I think the sizes of the PDF are. I don't know
Oh,
where I saw the sizes of the PDFs, but yeah, I think mine is like significantly smaller than everyone else's.
yeah, that sounds right. Okay, so I thought this would be a good paragraph for you to analyze. I'll put it in tutoring. You can start to take a look at it, and I will tell you a bit of context of this. So this book is called Possible Minds. It's like AI related. It has one chapter per author from a bunch of famous people, including there's
Okay,
a
yep.
DD chapter. This paragraph though is by Steven Pinker. This is the first paragraph of his article, so you're not missing any context.
Yeah, no, this will be interesting.
Yeah, so
Considering
this is what actual intellectuals write today, and I wrote an FI post criticizing this paragraph because so the book came up, and I said that I'd gone through the first like 13 chapters or something, and skipped ahead when I found like several errors and thought it was dumb. And someone wrote back that they thought most of the chapters were bad, which I don't entirely believe them or whatever, but they said they totally liked the DD and Pinker chapters. So I read most of the first paragraph from Pinker. I didn't actually analyze the entire paragraph, and pointed out a number of flaws because it had impressed someone, and I found it was a really good example of the stuff
yeah, no,
intellectuals write.
I immediately noticed this. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Elan Vital sort of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that that is quite a fancy term.
Um, I mean, it's fancy enough that there's like the first paragraph of the Wikipedia article doesn't summarize it at all. Um, Self-organization and spontaneous morphogenesis of things in an increasingly complex manner. Um, yeah,
Noun,
um,
etymology French, the vital force or impulse of life.
yeah, okay. So similar to the immaterial soul, the
Yeah.
Deus
So
ex
it wasn't
machina.
in New Oxford, but Webster's Third has it. Not found. Alain Vital. Especially in Bergsonian philosophy. The creative force within an organism that is responsible for growth, change, and necessary or desirable adaptations. That
That
seemed a bit
sounds
different.
Lamarckian.
Vital force hypothesized by Henry Bergson. Wait, is that a different name? Bergsonian. Oh, okay, it's a different form, but same name.
Uh,
Source of efficient causation and evolution in nature, also called life force. Oh, the OED
um,
has it. Has a bit more, but
I did just recall there. I'll just make a note for later. Um, I don't know whether it's interesting enough to actually discuss, but there was a podcast you had. Um, oh, can I find? This podcast app I have deletes the thing from the playlist once you finish listening to it, which is really annoying. Um, anyway, we'll talk about that later. Okay. So, artificial intelligence is an existence proof of one of the greatest ideas. The abstract realm of knowledge, reason, purpose does not consist of
yeah. I think this stuff is
something.
complicated enough. You're gonna have to look at it on a chunk size smaller than sentences, at least for some of them.
Yeah. I'll break it up into sentences to maybe outline each one. How do I? I'm just going to mark stuff in angle brackets for like coming back to. I mean, that's what it seems like it's saying. It's just a non-supernatural mind. I don't know if I agree with this term, like in existence. I mean, I think what he's saying is the idea of like AGI proves that the mind is not supernatural. Um, or
He actually just says does not consist of, so he's not saying it isn't those things, he's just saying it doesn't consist of them, meaning that it consists of some set of things including something else.
um, so so yeah, it's like this subsection of the mind doesn't include these things. Um, like I read not consist of to sort of be like it's not at all present in, but he's sort of not really saying the entire mind. Is that what you meant?
I think if you take it literally, does not consist of means does not wholly consist of. Like you can't form it just from these things, which I don't think excludes them. I assume he meant to exclude them, but I don't think that's what he actually wrote.
Yeah, it's sort of, I mean, just looking at definition stuff. So, like the crew consists of 5 men. It doesn't make sense to say the crew consists of 4 men and the crew consists of 5 men in that case. So in like that usage, it's definitely fully comprised. Archaic to be consistent with, so that'd be full as well. Um,
Like, if you say the political coalition does not consist of Republicans plus libertarians, that could be because it consists of, say, Democrats plus libertarians.
Yeah, or just
It's
Republicans, or yeah. Oh, well, if it's a coalition, it needs two things, but yeah, but it doesn't exclude any of the things in the list if you've got more than one, which I mean that's even more ambiguous here because he's sort of got this list, the alarm vital or immaterial soul or miraculous powers of neural tissue.
yeah, and he's using or instead of and for some reason. He's also repeated the or for some reason instead of putting a comma here for a list.
I think that's like a dramatic thing, sort of thing, as in like this or this or this or this. But yeah, but that's sort of something that I've started to pick up on as an annoying thing that people do, that I've done as well. Okay, so that's like an annoying side effect of his phrasing there. I don't know. It's unclear whether he actually meant that or not, which is a problem.
Yes, it's hard to tell what he meant. Maybe the later sentences will help.
Cool. So rather, it can be linked to the physical realm of animals and machines via the concepts of information, computation, and control. Yeah, so that sort of seems to imply that it's. I mean, again, linked to is like an association this has out of more possible associations. Um, I don't even know if like trying to reinterpret this, like saying to some degree AGI is based on like physical systems, e.g., information systems and computation. Um, I'm not. I feel like that's even just going too far on what he's said. Like based in is a more. It's like a more concrete relationship than linked to.
Okay, first thing is, what is the it here? He's using a reference, so let's be clear on what it refers to.
So I mean the. So my intuition is like AI, as he's used it in the opening paragraph, in the opening sentence. But
Okay, what are the
it's
candidates? Let's look for candidates. So AI is a candidate. Maybe existence proof. Maybe the great ideas of human history, or one of. And maybe the abstract realm of knowledge, reason, and purpose. Yeah, these are all candidates.
yeah. So the idea here is
And then I assume
like
it's not going to be Elan Vital or these things.
yeah, that would seem counterproductive. So yeah. Okay. So what does he actually say? Rather, it can be linked to the physical realms of animals. So I mean, if he was talking about one of the greatest ideas in human history, the idea that like the brain isn't supernatural, to summarize or to shortcut, um, that makes sense. But then it also just makes sense to say AI. It doesn't make sense to say existence proof, particularly because like the idea of the existence proof being linked to animals and things seems a much weaker connection.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
Existence proof doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at the context. So probably not that one.
and then I mean, it could just be the abstract realm of knowledge, reason, and purpose, in the sense that, like, he's making a claim about this thing being, uh, like, based in physical reality. Like, the abstract realm is connected to the real realm, the physical realm. Rather, it can be linked to the physical realm. So, okay, so the realm is, we get a hint here in the sense that it can be linked to the physical realm. So,
I think it referring to realm makes more sense than it referring to one of the great ideas, which then encapsulates the realm plus does not consist of and this extra stuff. Like, I think it makes more sense if it directly refers to the realm than to this, like, whole idea as a group.
It's definitely like more foundational as like if he was building things up to say like realm here, this is connected to this realm, like, and then we're going to build up from there, as opposed to AI, something about realm 1, something about realm 2.
Yeah, so I think this is already bad writing because it shouldn't be this hard to figure out what it refers to. Um, yeah, it should just be easier on the reader to figure out what a simple word like it and the second sentence of the article refers to. But he
Yeah.
has like X is Y, rather it is, or it can be, close enough. But then it's maybe not the X that it refers to. Like we have a serious other candidate that reading the second sentence, I think abstract realm makes more sense than AI. Although it's hard to be sure so far.
Well, the two competing sort of outlines here, to some degree, AI is based on physical systems, and then to some degree, the abstract realm of knowledge, reason, and purpose is based on physical systems. Or physical systems, I'm putting the word there, physical realm, infosystem / computation. That's a better way to. Yeah, okay.
References are something I tell people a lot to be careful with. A lot of times it's worth repeating one or two words rather than using a pronoun
Mm.
for extra clarity at the cost of only a little bit more length.
I've definitely, whenever I want to, like I've noticed in sentences, this is like within the last few weeks, in sentence where I want to say like that and it, or, you know, that and his, or things like that, multiple references in the same thing, I'll usually try, unless there's like a clear subject from the last sentence to refer to only by reference, then I'll just put both nouns in again. Because it's just way clearer, even if it's, you know, the sentence is 30% longer.
So it seems like he either wants AI or reason, both of which can be expressed pretty briefly. Like, reason is a 6-letter word that might represent what he wants. Even like the abstract realm of reason is not that bad.
It's also, I mean, just to make matters more complicated, is like is it like the abstract realm of reason and, or the abstract realm of knowledge and reason and purpose, or is it the abstract, like the realm is of all these things? That's like not clear either.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, yeah, you can write like reason slash etc. to refer to the things already listed with it. It's awkward though.
he's not in the first paragraph. He's not using like a plural type thing. I'm not
One
sure
of
what
the
would
ways you
be.
can be clear while keeping the entire thing repeated is you can write that realm, and then you're referring to the
Yeah,
same realm you just referred to, and it's everyone's going to know what you're talking about that way. And that way you get to repeat your qualifiers, abstract, of, knowledge, reason, and purpose. Those all get repeated when you say that realm.
yeah. Um, yeah, okay. No, the realm makes more sense, I think, in terms of foundational stuff. Maybe we'll get more hints as we go on. I mean, well, knowledge, if he's skipping to knowledge, it sort of makes sense to keep the meaning lower than AI. Like, if he's talking about that realm still, knowledge is part of the description of that realm, and so we've got a direct link back. Whereas if we went to AI in the to some degree sentence, or rather it can be linked in that sentence, then it makes more sense to keep at the level of realm. Otherwise, we're sort of like AI jumping down to realms, jumping up to AI, and then back to knowledge, which we've only connected to a realm so far.
Oh yeah, so when he says
So
knowledge can be explained, this is a hint that he's talking about here, reason or knowledge, or not AI. Because he
yep,
continues talking about knowledge, not AI.
um,
So
yep,
this is a bit bad
reason
though,
knowledge.
because his main topic sentence starts out artificial intelligence as an existence proof, but then his second sentence is about this like subordinate clause, this secondary part of the sentence.
He also
He's
could have just started one of the greatest ideas in human history, like pretty much. He doesn't need the AI stuff.
Yes, one of the greatest ideas is,
And that would be a way clearer introduction to where he was coming from. And then you can finish with AI as an existence proof of that and actually like reason about, or build up the argument for that, as opposed to asserting it at
yeah.
the beginning and maybe coming back later.
I mean, I think it's written this way so that the first half of the first sentence sounds really fancy.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think it's very unclear. Like, existence proof is not a standard concept. You can't just refer to that and expect people to know exactly what sort of proof it is. Like, he's pretending that it's a standard concept, and if you don't know it, you're not part of elite circles. He's
Uh,
pretending that
yeah.
his peers all know what it is, and he forgot that laymen might not.
Also, I mean, I can see the phrase like proof by existence sort of makes a bit more sense in the way that like in like math stuff you might say like by observation, in the sense that I'm not going to bother writing down the details. I just looked at the thing and the number 4 is there, so I'll make my conclusion. Um, but it's I mean, right now I don't see like
Yeah, but then it's not just that the term is unclear. It's also artificial intelligence is supposedly an existence proof, but artificial intelligence does not exist currently.
yeah, we don't have an implementation of it. If he's talking about the term in the sense that it's commonly used, then it's not an existence proof of this at all. Um,
Right, like
yeah,
AlphaGo is not an existence proof of this. So if that's what you mean by artificial intelligence, this is wrong. On the other hand, if he means AGI, then he should say AGI would be an existence proof rather than is.
mm,
Like, if we inventing
yeah,
AGI would be an existence proof. Like, if we could develop this, it would prove our point that computers without neurons and carbon atoms can do it.
um, it it so it doesn't. I mean, sort of going even deeper, it doesn't prove that the human mind doesn't have supernatural elements either. It can prove that like this abstract realm is at least like physically manifestable, but it
Yeah.
doesn't exclude these other. So anyway, yeah. So and our prediction of AI or AGI doesn't prove anything. Like that's not an existence proof of anything. Um,
Yeah, and it would depend how we built the AGI. Like, what if we found the magical incantation and configuration of silicon atoms that allowed AGI, like, rather than using like scientific development techniques?
um,
Then it certainly
as well.
wouldn't prove magic is wrong.
Um, if we so how there's this fear that somehow through like evolutionary algorithms, like an AGI will spontaneously exist. If that happened, then and it was legitimately an AGI, even though we might not know how to tell that, it definitely wouldn't prove this, because we had no explanation about how to construct it.
Yeah. Yeah, so this seems pretty nonsensical, but we got to see what he says in the rest of the paragraph and see if he rescues it or defends it in some way.
So knowledge can be explained as patterns in this. I hate this sort of writing. Explained as patterns in matter or energy that stand in systematic relations with states of the world, with mathematical and logical truths, and with one another. Okay, so if we work backwards, there are 3 properties that he mentions that are important. Um, there's this patterns of matter and energy, and then knowledge. So, like, sort of making a point, um, uh, patterns or something about reality and physics, relation states of the world, and then one another. Patterns must be the subject there, right?
Knowledge can be explained. So the subject of the beginning is knowledge. Then I think as is a conjunction here. Yeah. So we have knowledge can be explained, conjunction, as, then we have patterns that stand. Oh. Yeah, no, as is a preposition, actually.
Yeah.
Why don't you try to diagram the sentence with a tree?
So, is it worth outlining first, or we can just drop a lot of the descriptions?
Yeah, you can outline. That's a way to help figure out the tree structure.
Um, Oops. So, yeah, no, this is one of those like ridiculous sentences that you need to break down 3 times before you can actually figure out the structure. I mean, I feel like we can probably can be explained as, we can say is, to at least roughly get the structure. Um, Patterns in or, and then there's sort of this like 3 points.
Yeah. That is the core structure.
Um,
Yeah, they stand in relation with. Oh no, they stand in relation with, and then there's 3 things. With states, with math, with one another.
so yeah, so, and then, well, we could actually, I mean, just thinking about it, we can break this down into sentences. Like this can almost be a paragraph of its own. And then this is sort of annoying as well, where like he's got this in preposition here, or in
Yep.
systematic. And sorry, was that yep or no?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then these other like things, like other prepositions, he's got, a second, like there's a preposition inside the preposition, and then these
Yes.
other 2 things, which is just feels like a really bad way to write it. Um, okay, so yeah, so knowledge, patterns, got, oops, where have I gone? Break it up for. That doesn't even make sense. Oh, the in systematic relations is over the 3 of them, not over the first one, because those
Yes.
patterns stand with mathematical and logical truths doesn't make sense. It's got to be in systematic relations with logical and in systematic relations with one another.
Yeah, each of the words with applies to relations, not to standing. Yeah, that
Um,
was tricky. I didn't notice that immediately either, because that's a bit non-typical. That you're
okay,
repeating the preposition, but it's not actually replacing the initial preposition. You're repeating the secondary preposition over and over. Unnecessarily even, because it's the same one 3 times. Usually when you repeat
yeah,
the preposition, it's because it changes.
you take it out with, yeah. So if it said like patterns in matter and energy that stand in relations with states of the world, mathematical and logical truths, and one another, it would be so much clearer what preposition was happening
Yes,
there.
it'd be easier to read if you just dropped the extras.
then we can yep, and then we can get these, which make way more sense now. Which it's like at this point, like what he's saying, I don't disagree with any of it, but how difficult it was to actually figure that out, like, um, yeah, is surprising.
Yeah, and
Um,
imagine like how long the typical reader spends on this and how much of it they actually understand.
I think they probably just connect knowledge, matter or energy, states of the world, mathematical and logical truths, and one another. And that would be whether they realize what one another was referring to might be a different matter. But pun not intended. But yeah, this is one of those things where I feel like it's easier to sort of like skim the sentence and then try and do error correction to figure out what he meant than to actually read the sentence, which is a
Yeah,
pretty
I think people
bad.
just kind of give up and they're just like, oh, AI and Elan Vital is bad, and information and computation are important, and knowledge is important, and we're learning how knowledge works. Knowledge deals with states of the world and with each other. Ooh, it's recursive or something fancy. You just keep going and like never actually figure out what it actually means.
There's also a weird bit of redundancy between states of the world and patterns in matter and energy. Like
Yes,
they're
there is.
um, which also then means this last part is sort of like there's it's a they none of them completely overlap, but it's not clear out of this that there is even an overlapping. Um, okay, gosh.
Yeah, it's a mess, but I think a tree will help with this one.
Yep. Oh, so I've got on the right hand side of my screen a tree.
Oh, okay. Missed that.
Um, oops.
Oh, this is a outline tree.
Yeah, yep. Um, we can.
Do you want to try a word by word grammar tree as well?
That's this is gonna be fun. Yep, let's do it. All right. So
I think it'll be
the
good to
main.
see the structure and how much nesting there is and stuff.
So based on like my outline here, it feels like the main part of the sentence is to do with this explained as. Um, does that mean like
Yeah. You can get started
so?
even if you have to drag it under something else later.
Yep. Um,
You can just do
well, one thing.
parts.
Yep. Well, the first thing. So that is I think is a conjunction. So if we actually that's one thing that even like in my outline I haven't done
Yeah,
is
it's called a relative pronoun or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's playing a conjunction role. Essentially, it's enabling there to be another clause.
like yeah, it does both reference and conjunction. Um, the um, now knowledge is I don't think this is a plural, but patterns is a plural, and this is referring to a plural. So I think it has to be patterns. So and those patterns
Oh,
stand in.
yeah, yeah. It's patterns that, I agree.
Okay. Oh yeah, I've got this prepositional thing. Is that I'm sort of actually wondering whether that's like grammatically correct. Um, to repeat preposition. I mean, well, it must be if we repeat prepositions at the at the start of each list element when the preposition changes,
Yeah, I
then
don't think it's
presumably
wrong. It has parallelism, it makes sense.
we can have, so that seems like we've basically got two clauses.
Yes.
Okay, so, and we have one node of the tree, good. Let me just fix this layout. So for like explained as patterns in matter or energy, I'm wondering whether that's a noun or acting as a noun phrase.
Oh, explained as?
So they can be explained. Explained is, so can be is going to throw me for a bit, but I'm going to look that up in a minute. If we said knowledge is explained as like just a clause, then we've got explained as acting as a noun. Is that consistent with grammar stuff? Because just thinking back to, so with like gerund, we've got an ing, but with ed, we've usually got an adjective, I think, and then gerunds can't have, oh, I should just Google it. That's better. Yeah, so it's a past participle.
Explained?
Yep. So if we said knowledge is explained, that feels grammatically correct, but I'm not sure if we could use it as that. But the can be, like knowledge can be read. So the can is an adverb on, or a helper verb on, oh, I need to find out what type of word it is. I haven't Googled it before. Yep, okay. So, well, be able to. Knowledge be able to be explained. So I think be must be, oops. Be must be the verb.
Actually, can is the finite verb, and be is an infinitive. But if you want to call can an auxiliary verb and treat it as a modifier, it's not that big a deal.
Okay, be is, so no. Yeah, okay, so because it's like is able to sort of thing. Knowledge is able to be. Yeah, okay. So if we replace like can with is able to here, it becomes clearer. Knowledge is able to be explained as patterns. That makes more sense. Can is the main. Oh, sorry, that's going to be mail. I'm just going to be back in 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Where are we up to?
Are you putting multiple words in a node as a temporary step?
Yeah, just as a way to sort of like group them in there.
Okay.
Um, because so B is the next like thing I'm not sure about. In the sense that so I don't know if there's a way for it to be used. All right, so the explained is not a noun.
Explained as an adjective, complement for B.
Yeah. So I was thinking like as read, like knowledge can be read. For example, as in like the color. So like be explained is the first sort of unit there, and then as patterns, as is prepositional, we've got patterns after that.
Yep,
Um,
prepositional phrase.
oh, so uh, be explained is that what was the thing called? So we had it was a participle in the dictionary. Explained was.
Yep.
Um, with be, no, because that would be to be. So
B's an infinitive that doesn't have the to in front of it, which happens sometimes.
is that okay? So be explained is the subject. Um, with infinitives, you put infinitives as a unit, right? Is that I'm just trying to remember. I think it was in uh like there was one thing with like to, but I think to is a preposition we break up, and to like infinitive
Oh, to
we
before an
sometimes
infinitive is a particle. It doesn't really do anything, so you can merge it into a node, but you don't have to. But I would not merge anything else. It's just specifically the word to is a sort of a non-functional word.
okay. So in this case, if we have so yeah, okay. So B is so two is sort of dropped, but in a different phrasing we might have two in there. But two is taking B as the um I'm not sure sometimes how to use the like as in two governs B, or um I think govern was used in a different sort of context. I sometimes say on for talking about words relating to each other. Like B is used on to explain or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know the technical explanation of how the to works in infinitives. I don't think it's that important. It's just a detail. Okay, so for the ordering of the words, you have can, and then the question is can what? And you next have explained. So that suggests that it is the thing that can is explained, like knowledge can explained.
Yep.
However, that's not grammatical.
Yep. So
Yeah, it's actually knowledge can be something.
yeah, okay, all
Um,
right. So like the infinitive noun,
what can knowledge be something, and then be what be explained.
yep, and so explained is the object or complement of be.
Yes,
Um, and then explained is what the preposition is acting on.
yes, yeah. The
Um,
as patterns is trying to talk about the type of explanation, not the type of being or the type of canning.
um, With matter or energy there, so or is sort of list, like forming a list. Um,
Yeah. So I
should I
would
just
put the
list
or
them side by side?
next,
Okay.
and then put the things under it.
So a conjunction is close enough, or makes sense?
Yeah, it is a conjunction. It's just not a clause conjunction, it's a phrase conjunction.
Okay, I don't think they're covered in FI/grammar.
Yeah, they're called the same thing. There's just a conceptual difference when you're joining two phrases or two clauses that I think is
Yep.
notable, but underemphasized. Okay,
Okay.
so in matter or energy, what is that telling us about or modifying?
Um, patterns.
Yep.
So that makes more sense, of course, because we can't. I'm not prepositioning a preposition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a nice long tree. Um, all right. I think that knowledge can be explained as patterns in matter or energy, or can be explained as patterns in both matter, energy. Um,
Yeah. So then there's the that part. I would suggest treating the that as a modifier rather than a conjunction in this case, because I think the basic purpose, I think it's going to come out clearer that way.
so knowledge can be explained as patterns in matter or energy, and
I think that this whole part of the sentence is essentially acting as a nested modifier rather than as a conjoined second thought. Does that make sense?
yes, yep, yep, yep.
So I
Um,
prefer,
in,
yeah, the other representation in this case.
um, it's a bit awkward in the idea of uh, like putting and here makes the conjunction sort of thing easier, but because it's almost like this entire section is an adjective
Yes.
on the patterns. Patterns?
Yep.
Um, yeah.
Yep, that's where I would put it.
So we can. Oh, this is really annoying. One thing that I do need to.
I would just take the root node and name it root or something, and then
Yeah. Okay.
call it good enough.
Ignore it. Yep. Um, so if we say like that is a preposition, this makes.
It's
I
a,
feel like this.
call it a conjunction there. Because
Uh,
prepositions take only a noun, but we have a
so
verb stand.
so the if I put it as a conjunction, does that mean that like in actually is now like sub that conjunction, subordinate to that
No.
like well not subordinate. So it is parallel still, or at the its siblings rather.
Yeah, so patterns has two modifiers. One is the in and one is the that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, using that as the conjunction. Uh,
Yeah, just use an implied word for the subject.
I wanted to put the same in there just to make it
Yep,
clear because if I did
that's fine.
patterns, yeah, cool.
Okay, so for this
Um,
next clause, what's the verb? That's the key word.
stand.
Yeah.
Um,
And then what are the subject and object of it?
um, um, so the subject is still the same patterns.
Yep. You can drag those under.
You reckon that's like so the one thing with using that as a conjunction here, marking it as a conjunction, I've like had in my mind pretty much the conjunction should always have two children. Um,
Oh. You could call it a subordinator there if you prefer. It's creating a subordinate clause.
um, that makes sense. Okay, so same pattern stand, and then
Yeah, it is not
so
conjoining patterns to stand. It's not doing that.
yeah,
The things it's linking are this
the
pattern's up
previous.
here to modifier,
Yep.
but it's linking them
Um,
in a with a whole clause, which is why it's conjunction related in some sense. But yeah, subordinator is a good term. It's a thing that introduces a subordinate clause.
yep. Which also then has a clear relationship to the idea of a subordinating conjunction. Okay, so stand and then
Yeah, so does stand have an object?
so we immediately jump to preposition in systematic relations. Systematic relations needs another preposition though, because relations requires it. Systematic is acting on relations. It's describing relations. So in relations with
Yeah, if you
states of
say
the world.
stand in relations, it's a bit of an incomplete thought.
So in terms of so I'm trying to spot the noun essentially is and the
So you
prepositions
can
don't make any.
just go through with the stuff you do find and start treating it, and then you can add a object later if there is one.
Yep. Well, it sort of feels like there's not. Um,
Yeah, that's correct. It's just all modifiers for the rest.
Relations as a noun feels not to make sense because it needs to be in regards to something. Relations with is relations with acting as a preposition, like a prepositional phrase?
Relations is a noun. It's just one that doesn't
It is?
make very much sense by itself.
Yeah, okay. Um,
Because it's talking about a relationship, which makes you wonder a relationship between what and what. If you leave out the info, it's confusing.
okay, how do we deal with oops. Um, yeah, so it's just listed as a noun.
Yep.
Okay. Um, so stand in systematic relations with states of the world, with mathematical logical truth, and with one another. So, and I feel like is probably what we should, if we're not factoring out the with, then and then this will make um,
Yep, that's what I was going to suggest. That makes sense.
it sort of makes it far more obvious how badly factored the sentence is, though. And under each of these, we've got our things. Okay, so just looking up. Okay, so if another is acting as a pronoun, then one can act as a determinant. One is also a pronoun. One another is one
Yeah,
another an
this is
entire.
actually a little tricky.
One
Why don't you
another
do
is also a pronoun.
the other one? Oh, one another is a phrasal pronoun?
It looks like, I mean, it's just listed as pronoun here, which I feel like makes sense.
Yeah, you can just leave it as one node then. That seems fine.
Okay, so this is and mathematical. So both of these are truths. We've got the first one is truths have an E. How do I spell that? Oh, I put a H at the front. That's why. And then mathematical goes under that. And then
hold on. So this I would adjust. Um,
Mhm.
okay, so what things is and joining together? Okay, so
The
you're
two,
treating it as you're treating it like there's an implied word here. Is that what you're doing?
yeah. The first true. So, like, I mean, we could
Okay,
have
so that makes
mathematical
sense.
and yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna. So the alternate sort of thing, if we had sort of here, we could have truths there and joining them and doing it sort of like this would be the other way that I'd put it.
Yeah, that's what I was
Wouldn't
going
it?
to suggest because I try to avoid adding extra words if it's unnecessary. So
Yep.
this way it doesn't have an extra node, so I prefer it.
And then these are, well, essentially both adjectives. I guess
Yep.
we get an objective phrase. Um,
Yes, we have an adjective phrase consisting of mathematical and logical, combining two adjectives with a conjunction.
um, and then states of
Yep.
the world. Oh.
Alright, now zoom out so we can see the whole thing.
Wow. Yep. That's a balanced tree, all right.
Sarcasm?
Oh. Yeah. As in, it's just, um, yeah, it just flows down. It's sort of a bit ridiculous. Seeing it like this makes the ridiculousness more obvious.
Yeah, that's why I wanted the that to be nested underneath. I thought that fits well, and then you get to see the actual structure of how much is modifying how much.
So another thing, just thinking about the putting that down there. If we put, so we've got the same patterns sort of implied here. Um, uh, yeah, which still makes sense. But if we had the conjunction up here, I feel like we'd have to do more work. Well, first off, we'd have to then link the patterns, which would be over on the right-hand side, to these patterns, which are then nested down the tree, and not knowledge, which would be the more obvious thing. Um, so it does make sense. I think it does make sense to put that down here because it's much more closely related to the patterns than it is to knowledge, or anything happening up the top of the tree.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like to treat them as conjunctions when they have a modifier role.
Yep,
When a whole clause is acting like a modifier, then I find the conjunction treatment doesn't work well, and just treating it like a modifier it works better.
that makes sense.
Yeah, so um, one of the things that I think is notable about this is you can imagine deleting all the text, so you have all the nodes, but they're empty, and you could compare different sentences with all the words removed and just have the tree. And you could look at them and
Mm.
you could learn something about the sentences only from the structure with no words.
Will we still have the types in there, like verb, noun
You could
type
do it
stuff?
either
Or
way. Even without the
yeah,
types, you would still have some concept of the
yes,
sentence just looking at the bubbles.
yeah.
And especially like if you had the trees for every sentence in the paragraph, you could see like, okay, this paragraph has like a very complex structure. You could compare it to some other book with simple sentences and see their structures.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly convoluted, especially considering like we could just say knowledge can be explained as patterns. Those patterns are made of implied matter and energy. Those patterns stand in relations with like you can say the sentence pretty simply. Um,
Yes. I
it's just that Pink has chosen not to.
Yeah, I think that he confuses himself. Like, I think he's making it so complicated that he doesn't even entirely know what he's saying. And there's reasons for this. It impresses people because they get lost. They find it's too hard. They're like, oh, they assume that he made a good faith effort to simplify it and that they're just too dumb. Like, the smart guy used his brilliant smarts to make it as easy as possible, and I still can't figure it out. I guess I'm not smart enough. Like, which is ridiculous. That's not actually what's happening here.
Yeah.
Like, people don't have the training to create this tree. That does not mean they're dumb. School literally did not teach people how to do this. This is not taught in school. Like, they don't even teach like that regular diagramming where we put like or no, you put noun and like slash and then verb and then like modifier, and like the dumb
Which
diagramming is usually not even taught nowadays.
the it sort of is remarkable to me in the sense that like it's denying first principles are useful or worth teaching when it comes to like basic comprehension. Like, so I was talking to a friend a little while ago who was talking about, oh, they think they have roughly good comprehension, or approximately their comprehension is pretty good, and their reasoning is that they've always scored well on comprehension tests. Um, I feel like those tests are things I could have scored well on, and I definitely have a very, very different view of my
Yeah,
ability
the
to
tests are
apprehend that.
tailored to the actual students, like so that they can pass them. They're not gonna design the test so that everyone scores 20% and then say, I guess our teachers suck. They
Well,
they
yeah,
set really low
well,
standards that are proportional to how well they actually can teach with their shitty textbooks and so on.
yeah. Wow.
So
Okay.
regarding structure, I made some trees as examples. These were meant to represent discussion structures in particular, I think. Or maybe it's just anything, actually. Yeah, maybe it's just any ideas. So I wanted to show there's like different types of structure. So even if you didn't know any of the words, you can just assume every node is a sentence, and you can understand the structure of the conversation to some extent. Um, like I think, you can have a very deep structure with little branching. Here we have a linear structure with a little bit of branching instead of no branching. And then here we have some major branches. Like you can see there's this major split point, right? And there's a major split point here.
Yep.
Right, and then this one doesn't have a main branch. So this one still had a main branch of the conversation, despite there being some sub-branches. But this one, there's no clear main branch. Like, you can try to follow like this, except we changed colors multiple times. Like, these are actual topic changes. The original topic got lost, and then we had this purple topic, and then this one got lost, and we had the green topic, and then it ended, and we had the orange topic. So it's not actually a single branch. You can find a longest path, but it's not a single branch. This one, though, it's no main branch plus deep. This is no main branch plus shallow, so we have like many little branches.
Yep.
And then this was a mixed conversation, I called it, so you can see like more variety. I think this is fairly common where it's like they go for a while and they start to get some depth and then they start over. And they go for a while and they get some depth and they start over. And it
They
keeps
go to the
happening
Yeah,
and
they don't resolve the first one necessarily, but they skip to the like next subtopic and there's yep.
yeah. So they go like medium depth on like a bunch of things sequentially is a common thing. This one is about merging, so I have branches merging into each other, like this teal branch here merges into this gray branch, which merges into this green branch. So when you
Yep.
actually include merging, it gets more complicated than the original structures.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, I also made the point you can freehand draw trees. So these are examples that I just very quickly drew of completely made up things. But
Hmm.
they all look a bit different, is the point. And so if you're having a conversation with someone, you could try to like very quickly freehand draw your estimate of the structure, and they could do theirs, and you can see if you're even on the same page.
Yeah. That sounds like so it's an interesting I've never heard anyone like doing that, as in like to get both parties once they say have like an introductory 5-minute chat type thing, and then uh like to both estimate how complex they think the discussion is, because if they disagree on that in any substantial way, um it
Yeah.
probably means yeah, the discussion's not going to go well. It's going to be really troublesome. I
Yeah.
mean, if they're similar, it doesn't mean that it will go well, but yeah, but if it's wildly
Yeah.
different,
And it's not just how complex it is, but like, do we have any deep topics? Or was it a bunch of shallow topics? And like, roughly how many topics were there? And like, all these kinds of things.
hmm
So yeah, this is one of the things you can do when you start getting good with trees, is you can see the structure of discussions in the same way that the structure of the Pinker thing was notable. So if you've looked at these things a lot, you can get a sense of what's normal and when something's more complicated than normal. Like this one you can guess even with not very much experience, it seems complicated.
thinking about it, I feel like our analysis of it's on the order of complexity of like the first sentence of the Declaration of Independence that we analyzed the other week.
Yeah, maybe that was a bit worse, but I'm not sure. Like, I
Like
wouldn't
the
be confident
historic
in saying it
context.
was even worse.
Yeah, more forgivable, perhaps though.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Um,
written 200 years ago. More? 250?
and it was like, I mean, I feel like people have definitely for a long time, like if something is meant to represent a lot of people or a big country or things, then it has to be impressive.
Well, if Pinker wants to keep his prestige, he has to be impressive.
Yeah. Okay. Should we try and finish off the first paragraph, having gotten through 3 sentences?
Yeah, so looking at this, now that we know the structure better, we have these patterns are connected. The patterns stand in relations with and then with these three things,
Yep.
right? And the patterns are in matter and energy. So it's weird because we have patterns in relationship, but patterns already are relationships,
Yeah. As
right?
opposed to
So
like the patterns themselves being relationships between these things,
yeah,
they're
so
in relations with these things.
yeah, so patterns are made out of stuff. So normally it's the stuff itself is in relation, has a relationship. And then we say, oh, the stuff has a relationship, there's a pattern there. But he's saying patterns themselves as a unit stand in relation to something, which is odd. And then the thing they stand in a relationship, the first one is states of the world. So patterns in matter or energy stand in relations with states of the world. This is an odd comment because patterns in matter or energy, well, matter and energy, those are states of the world. So we have patterns in states of the world stand in relation with states of the world,
Mm.
essentially.
I can sort of, I mean, I can interpret it charitably a few ways. Like there's a meta point about patterns of patterns, but he's not making that point. There's the idea of like substates of the world. So like patterns like the particular patterns or states of the world representing knowledge stand in relations to like other states of the world, which again is true, but doesn't feel like is exactly what he's saying. And you could say that if you wanted to say it. You could say like, matter, like knowledge is instantiated in our brains, and the matter associated with that has to connect somehow to the matter in the rest of the world, everything else that goes on. There has to be like a relationship there, which
Yeah,
is fine.
but
It's just
he
why
has
bring
not
all the
said
rest of the
that.
stuff in? No, he hasn't. Yeah. So if he meant that, why would you not say that? I mean, analyzing this, it sort of makes me think that he doesn't understand it. Um,
Yeah, that's what I think. I
because
think he's throwing fancy words out. He's just like, patterns in matter or in energy stand in systematic relationship with like states of matter and energy. It's like, what are you talking about?
yeah, no, you could cut the middle section of the tree out, like, and just go patterns, like, and then the rest. Just like, um,
Ah,
and that would make more sense. Like, they're patterns between states of the world, mathematical and logical truths, and one another. Like that as a thing would just make a lot more sense about describing knowledge.
yeah, so something like this. Knowledge can be explained as patterns in states of the world, even. Not
Yeah,
everything.
and
This
then you
one
could
makes
just
sense.
consistent with mathematical logic and truths and one another. Well, you could make that point separately as well, which would actually make more sense
Yeah,
because
like
you're
I think if you just cut the end too, you get a better sentence. Like this is a reasonable sentence. Knowledge can be explained as patterns in states of the world.
yep,
Right, but he just throws in so much verbiage that he makes it make less sense. It's also so can be explained as is poor wording, so you can delete that and you can write is. We have a two-letter word that works here. It's a well-known word.
yep,
Right? He's hedging, right? He's saying can be because he's saying you can do it in other ways. He doesn't want to say it is. This is on purpose. Um,
yeah.
he doesn't want to say knowledge is this. He's saying there's many ways to think about knowledge. Here's one of them that you could use, and I'm not going to commit myself on whether it's true or objective or how reality works. I'm just saying it's a perspective among many others. That's why this is here. It's like a
I
bit
just
of
started.
postmodernism.
I just started reading the next sentence and almost like face palming that is doing exactly the same thing.
Oh,
Reasoning
reasoning
can be
can be
explained as
explained.
transformations of knowledge by physical operations. Transformations of that not hold up. Okay. Oh man. Of that knowledge by physical operations that are designed to preserve those relations. Um, it's not as bad in that he hasn't like, got three things tacked onto the end. He's only got one, but it's the same structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's very confusing. I think it's very empty. Like
Yeah.
knowledge is these patterns. The patterns are systematic relations. Reasoning is transformations of the knowledge that keeps the relations we were just talking about. So
I mean,
reasoning is transforming it without making it stop being related to the world. Like we don't break the
when
patterns. We don't break the relationships when we reason. Okay, yeah.
like we could say when we transform knowledge in ways that doesn't break its relationships to the world and other truths, we call that reasoning. Like that is way clearer about what he's trying to actually say.
Yep.
Is transformations, reasoning is that, and there's a condition in the middle. Um, yeah.
Yep. All right, let's keep going. That one wasn't as hard to understand.
Purpose can be explained as the control of operations to affect changes in the world guided by, oh my God, guided by discrepancies between its current state and its goal state. Okay, so we've got these discrepancies between what is and what we want. That guides changes, operate, or it guides the control of changes.
This is so
Um,
fancy. The discrepancies between its current state and a goal state. That just means reality is different than our goal. We tried to make it more like our goal. That's it. But
yeah,
it's
so, um, oh, it reminds me of, what do you call it? I think it was in Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I read, more than 10 years ago. Um, and he describes wealth similar to Deutsch, actually, I think, where wealth is like your ability to change stuff. Um, and anyway, that's always sort of stuck with me as a really simple way to explain it. But it's essentially like this, like as the control of operations to affect changes in the world. It's just like doing stuff. That's just all
yes,
it means
controlling
is
the
doing
world.
stuff.
But it's yes, he makes it so indirect. Control not just of the world, but of operations. What type of operations? Ones that are trying to affect things and change things. I guess that's what control and operations are for, is to affect and change things.
So the one thing that I am just trying to reword it here. So purpose. So
He's
when you say
actually
like purpose
missing
is
something too, because
Mhm.
sometimes what we're trying to do, what we use our control for, is to prevent
To
change.
prevent, yeah.
So he's actually missed that nuance in all these words.
So
Sometimes we already
purpose is
have the goal state, and there's a thing that might change it, so we're trying to hold it steady, which is
so
definitely purposeful.
uh, I can sort of see an argument that all like is same as you can move like between positive and negative arguments, or you can transform them into each other. Like we could try and keep the state of the Earth the same by preventing a meteor hitting us, but that's like we're trying to change the course of the meteor, or we're trying to prevent someone enacting some law because we have good laws, but that's like trying to like persuade them or change the state of their brain to not continue trying to do the law. So there's like a way you could phrase everything positively, but it's that loses meaning
I think to try to
because
get positive phrasing, you're going to have to timestamp things, and you're going to have to say the current state is
yeah.
this city not hit by the missile at this timestamp. The goal state is this city not hit by the missile at this other future timestamp. And to get from current state to goal state, we have to control the world and the missile and so on. But I think that's just messier, and I think the idea of preserving something is generally going to work better.
Let's say and goals here. Yeah, so purpose is about making or preventing changes to the world based on our ideas and goals. Like, do we need anything more than that to really? I mean, the is about I'm not very happy with because like
he just throws so many words in between, like his point. Like, what we want is purpose is X. But what we have is purpose can be explained as the control of operations to affect changes in the world.
There's like
Like,
3 levels of indirection there.
yeah, he's just nesting so much junk in our way. If we made a tree, we'd find like a bunch of nesting before we actually get to the point. If we made a tree and we drew a line along the node relationships, like here is knowledge, we drew a line from like knowledge to something connected to knowledge, we'd find there's like a long line. There's many
Yep.
words between knowledge and the thing we're actually linking it to.
So the next sentence, naturally evolved brains, which immediately begs the question, are there artificially evolved brains like relevant here? I guess it sort of makes sense to
He
say this in
mentioned
the context
artificial
of AI,
intelligence, so
but
it
he
must
didn't mention
be in contrast
he
to
hasn't.
that.
That's the only thing, except that he's said nothing about AI since then. He said it as the first 2 words and then nothing more.
Yes.
And
Yes, he
then
changed the topic, but now he's going back to and contrasting with the topic he dropped.
so, so okay, so naturally evolved brains are just the most familiar systems that achieve intelligence through information, computation, and control. So, and he's trying to contrast this to AI without actually saying AI. So as opposed to saying, like, if we
Right.
could figure out how to do AGI, we would have 2 ways. We would have brains and AGI, and the thing that would be in common is these would both be systems that achieve intelligence through these things. Which he hasn't actually made the point that intelligence is based on these things, except in the very roundabout way by saying it's not supernatural.
Yeah, he thinks he did because he explained knowledge and purpose in terms of these things. That's what he thinks he's doing. And reasoning. He's trying to tell us that he has
He's got the
knowledge,
soft link
reason,
between his ideas.
purpose. And then we have knowledge, reasoning, and purpose. He actually has one sentence each about these 3 things from the beginning.
So I think it's very reasonable to break down those ideas. It's just like he's hedged at every possible thing. Like, as in the
Yeah.
first sentence doesn't say it's like this is the realm, it's based in this. Um, or that the first 2 could be one sentence, and then he's hedged on knowledge, he's hedged on the other like definitions, and so the link between actually like that intelligence has to do with information, computation, and control is again like it's just adds up all of that indirection in between it, all of those hedges, and you have the opinion like it. I have the feeling at this point in the paragraph that it's preemptive to actually like make any conclusions based on this because they're all just one of the ways as such. Like
Yes,
maybe
yes,
they're
yeah.
what about these other ways? Are they contradictory? Like, yeah. So
Yeah, it's like accumulating error bars. And when you do that 5 times, then you get big error bars.
yeah. So
So here
and
he's
then I
sort
don't
of
know why.
accusing people of bias. Like he's like, well, you're used to this type, but there's other types. You're just so parochial. You're stuck in the familiar. They're just the most familiar. There's nothing important about them fundamentally. It's just that they're parochial, and that's why they stand out to you. So this is actually an insult against his readers, I think.
Yeah, and just is unnecessary there. Like you could just say brains are the most familiar systems that achieve intelligence through blah. Like just stating it like
Yes.
that is no longer condescending. Um, yeah,
Yeah, he
but
doesn't
just
say what just refers to. Like it's contrasting it in some way, and he doesn't explain it.
where's my there we go.
So he means no more than, right?
Yeah. So
But this is like a comparison, like no more than what?
barely by a little, like no more than, yeah.
I think it's related to this, but there's supposed to be a contrast, like
Well, the one thing I could say is maybe not a condescending thing is if it was referring to the abstract, like, or sorry, the Alan Vital thing, but that's so far away from the, like, that's, you know, the most charitable I can
no,
think
I
of.
don't think that makes sense. Yeah, I think there's just a between the lines contrast,
Yeah.
between like reader opinion and his opinion.
Which
Okay,
makes more sense.
humanly designed systems that achieve intelligence vindicate.
What does...
So I think this is related to prove. Like, we're finally getting some sort of explanation of what he means by proof.
The
The
notion
notion that information processing is sufficient to explain it. What's it?
Human design systems that achieve intelligence? No?
Yeah, I think it might be intelligence. Achieving intelligence vindicates that information processing can achieve intelligence.
Sufficient to explain intelligence. Yeah? It...
Or maybe it is the notion that the late Jerry Fodder dubbed the computational theory of mind. It might be a forward reference.
Why would you... You're just introducing an it and an M dash for no reason then.
Yes.
Like, there's no...
I think so,
you could
but
just follow on.
what else would it be, though? Because if the it isn't a forward reference, then how does the M dash work?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It's... What else would it... I mean, as a parenthetical statement. Well, the notion is the only other hint. Vindicate the notion that information processing is sufficient to explain, like, the notion that the... So if this notion is the
Oh,
same
this could
thing...
be a restatement, yeah. So the notion that information processing is
Is
sufficient to explain intelligence, the notion that was dubbed the
Henry Ford dubbed it.
yeah, so it can work that way as well. But
Well,
it's
the computational
ambiguous.
theory of mind does
It-
feel like it fits with this, like the notion that information processing is sufficient to explain intelligence.
Yeah, so he uses it again, and again it is unclear what it refers to. Like, he's used the word it twice, besides this one. Yeah, so he uses it 3 times. And these two are unclear. This one means the world's current state, yeah?
Yeah, that's my reading. I mean, the world state we've had, or something similar to that we've had before.
Yeah.
And then current state, goal state, that makes sense. So that's a nice local use of the word it. That's easy to understand, relatively speaking.
Yeah, so this one's okay. And 2 out of 3 are, though, are very hard to understand what the reference is to.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so let's look at my email about this and see what I wrote back in February 2019. Alright, sentence 1. Pinker is communicating that he knows what the great ideas in human history are, that he's an expert judge of that.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
didn't even read into what he was actually trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Well, the extra stuff.
He's communicating that he knows terms that lay readers don't, like Elan Vital, and that this knowledge is relevant. It's part of his expertise, and your lack of it makes you less qualified to know which ideas are great. He presents this as a material difference between himself and you. If it didn't matter, why not stick to plain English? He's implying that, like, this fancy jargon is actually necessary, because otherwise, why would he use it?
That feels a pretty common, like, thing for people in this sort of position to do.
Yeah. Alright, so it's overly long and complex grammatically. So written to impress schools. A lot of people take the blame when they get confused by these things. This is explained in chapter 11 of Philosophy Who Needs It. Yeah, I would recommend looking that section up. And reading it. Okay, yeah. Search for the word elephant, and you will find a relevant part, and just read a bit before and after until you run into stuff that's not relevant. But this is about people who write like Pinker.
Yeah,
You
okay,
could
cool.
read the whole chapter if you want. It does analysis of a review of a philosopher. So it's about she didn't want to read the awful philosopher directly, so she read a review of his book and then criticized via the review, which provided enough information. It's about roles, I think.
I can understand that. I do the same thing with things from time to time. Like if someone's done a summary on YouTube type thing, often it's easier to just criticize the ideas that have been reprocessed into simpler language, um, in
Yeah.
that rather than the
The review's awful but shorter. Yeah, so anyways, you can read the whole chapter or just the part kind of around this. But she explains about people liking fancy ideas and taking the blame for it when they don't understand. And how that's like a major part of academia and it's how Kant is popular and stuff. Okay,
yeah.
so simplifying the first sentence, what did Pinker say? Artificial intelligence shows that reason isn't magic. And what did he mean? Successfully building an artificial intelligence would show that reason isn't magic. So in all the words he used, all these words, he didn't actually say what he meant about successfully building. He left out these keywords at the beginning.
Yep. Which if you yeah, it's sort of like if you can't think about existence proof enough and how that relates to things and the fact that it's talking about building it as opposed to the idea of it, then again you get this like self-blame thing.
Yeah. So there's more to analyze here. I would suggest at some point you look at the sentence more and see what you can come up with. Or not the sentence, the whole paragraph. Yeah,
Yep.
see what else you can come up with because we didn't figure everything out. There's so much to it. But so I went on to sentence 2. So rather is a back reference, and it is a back reference. So to understand the second sentence, you have to keep the first sentence still in your mind in order to figure out what rather and it refer to and how they connect, right? The second sentence is connected in two
So
ways to the first sentence.
a thing we didn't point out at the time, the because rather and it like have to be like I feel like they have to refer to the same thing. The only like negative statement in the first, so we've got like AI is an existence proof. Rather, that doesn't make sense. But the abstract realm of knowledge reason does not consist of blah. Rather, it consists of X. Like that's so it has to be. So it's the abstract realm because of this
Yeah,
other like hint. I don't think we talked about that at the time. But yeah,
yeah. Okay, so my point here is you have to keep that whole first sentence, that whole mess in your mind while reading the second sentence, and you have to get them both in your mind in order to figure out the meaning of the second sentence. So he's overloading how much nested crap has to fit in your mind by
yeah.
connecting the two complicated sentences to each other.
When it's just AI isn't magic. It can be based in reality. Is really all like that's all it's really saying.
Yeah. Okay, so his writing's making it hard to follow. What does it refer to? It's hard to figure out, but it's basically reason, which is from the middle of the first sentence, which is tricky. Normally, there's better grammatical guidance for what a pronoun refers to. Often it's the first thing in the sentence or the subject of the sentence, or sometimes the last thing, but it's in the middle. You have to be really careful with references to the middle. Those are not the first places readers are going to look. Right,
Yeah,
so I did it by trial and error. Like, just take all the nouns in the first sentence and try them out and see if they work. And when you have
yeah,
to resort to that, that's bad.
yeah,
And it's especially bad. This is a good point for someone who isn't a subject matter expert. Like this is for lay people. This is the second sentence of the book or of the article. It's the second sentence by Pinker, and so he's dealing with these non-experts. How are they supposed to figure it out? Like you have to actually understand what he's saying in order to figure out which nouns make sense.
I think in terms of the bigger question, how are they meant to figure out what AGI is and the implications is read the rest of the book.
The book doesn't
As
explain
in,
it. They're all individual essays.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I was just meaning that, like joking that the rest of the book is clearer than the first two sentences of this
Oh
chapter.
yeah. Okay, right. And then so the systematic relations things are patterns, right? That's what's systematic about them. the relationship appears systematic, not random, because it follows a pattern. So there are patterns that have a pattern relationship with states of the world, that is, states of matter and energy. The patterns also have a pattern relationship with one another. So this is very silly. And I think Pinker didn't even notice what he was saying. Like, his own writing confuses himself. But I tried to rephrase it. Knowledge equals patterns in matter or energy, which have pattern relationships with matter, energy, math, logic, matter, or energy.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, that's bad.
The
Okay, so
only
then,
you'd have to do a lot of pre-explanation about why you would include the redundancy before doing so.
yeah. Okay, so then he says reasoning is pattern preserving changes. Is
Yeah,
that
no, that's
profound? No. Reasoning involves figuring out which patterns matter, which to preserve, among other things. So Pinker's very abstract concepts here are very, very generic, and they're not actually very good or useful. He's not dealing with the issue that some patterns are more important than others, like which patterns should we care about. There are infinitely many patterns. He's just like pattern preserving. Like he
so
doesn't realize that there's an infinity of patterns.
the big error in this thing, I think, in this paragraph. I mean, there's lots of issues, but he means like it only makes sense if you say described as, not explained as. It's not an explanation at all. It's only a description of part of the behavior. Because as you point out, right, like which patterns are significant, and reasoning
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not doing arbitrary patterns. It's not,
It,
doing the same
yes,
thing over and over again, for
it makes
example.
more
Yeah.
sense as a partial description of part of what's going on. Yeah. Okay, so purpose has goal as a synonym. So he's saying purpose equals trying to achieve that purpose.
Hmm.
So essentially, it's a circular definition. He's defined purpose in terms of a purpose state.
We've already decided that that state must be purposeful. So of
Right,
course
like
it's
goals
purposeful.
are purposeful inherently. So if you assume you have a goal, that's having a purpose. They're synonyms.
Yeah, so we could say something like, in a target state for which we have an explanation for why it's good, something like that. That would have actual meaning in it, whereas this is just disguised circularity.
Well, that would, even if you had that, you would just be saying purpose is when you have an explanation of why something over something else, which is not really getting to what purpose is. It's not telling you like which explanations are correct or
No,
how
it's sort of
to.
starting to, but it's not all of the idea, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't even analyze the whole paragraph, but yeah, the name drop at the end
Yeah.
was
Yeah, I've never heard Jerry Fodor. I mean, is this significant? Like,
I don't know.
in terms of, it's not like, someone like Alan Turing who's like particularly notable in creative, or, in early AI or something like that. Um, Even then, why? I mean, if he wanted to call it, so this is sort of interesting, right? Because by doing this, he's trying not to call it the computational theory of mind. Like, he's not saying, like, that's not the sort of thing. This is like tacked onto the end. He's trying to avoid calling this. Whereas realistically, he could have introduced this as the first thing in the paragraph. Like, is this what the paragraph is actually about? The computational theory of mind? Why is it the last thing mentioned?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And like he never really does a good callback on existence proof or explains it. He just kind of moves on. It's a bit disjointed. So yeah, anyways, I suggest you try analyzing this more and see what else you can come up with. I pasted in tutoring the first several paragraphs, so if you want some context, you can see what he says
Ah,
next.
cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Um,
Um,
so Fodor is apparently an American philosopher and cognitive scientist. So, who died late 2017. So this book must have been, well, it's obviously after that.
oh yeah, the book only came out a couple years ago. Like I read it when it was new, so I guess it came out in 2019.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think being able to understand what people are actually saying and is pretty important, and a lot of it turns out to be not very good if you can understand it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that probably does it for tomorrow. In terms of just thinking about later this week, and stuff to do before tomorrow, if we're meeting next then, there's a little bit more to dig into in this paragraph, maybe some subsequent stuff.
Yeah, you could
What do you
work
reckon
on this
about?
paragraph, or you could do the writing, or both. Either one's fine.
Yeah, yeah, no, that sounds. I do want at least a little bit of something that we can writing that we can look at and maybe like because if there are any early errors, then it's obviously better to do that
Okay, yeah.
before the longest period.
Prioritize
Yeah,
writing something then, that's fine.
cool. All right, that sounds good.
Okay, see you
I'll see you
tomorrow.
tomorrow.